Thank you for tuning in. If you have subscribed to this channel, thank you. If not, please subscribe to the channel, like, and share the video. I love animals, especially dogs. They have peculiar mannerisms that I find amusing. I really find it funny when they tilt their heads. What does that mean? According to Google, dogs tilt their heads for a variety of reasons, but primarily to improve their hearing and vision, and also out of curiosity, or what I believe, to better understand what's being said. The reason I mention this is because I find myself tilting my head while watching some prophecy videos on YouTube. The current situation in the Middle East has led to an abundance of videos concerning Ezekiel chapters 38 through 39. This Bible passage concerns a war between Gog and Magog against Israel. When I start watching these videos, my head is parallel with my computer screen and perpendicular to the floor, looking straight ahead. About 3 minutes into the videos, my head begins to tilt, and I say to myself, wow, I'm exhibiting dog-like behavior, because my head is no longer perpendicular to the floor, but is now diagonal to the computer screen. Granted, interpreting Bible prophecy can be challenging, and there is no individual with all of the answers to some of these mysteries. However, if there is a no-brainer prophecy in the Bible, it has to be Ezekiel 38 through 39. Really, I don't understand the confusion, because despite the anxiety of current events, the Gog-Magog against Israel war will happen no time soon. Why is Ezekiel 38 through 39 a no-brainer prophecy? This prophecy, much like most of Daniel's prophecies, is self-interpreted. Ezekiel 38, 14 through 23, and Ezekiel 39, 25 through 39 clearly interpret the prophecy for us. Also, spoiler alert, Revelation 20 verse 7 conveniently tells when the Gog-Magog war will take place, and it's clearly not before the second coming of Jesus. So, please people, calm down. Ezekiel 38 through 39 has nothing to do with current events. Why did John, in Revelation, project the occurrence of this war 1,000 years after the second coming? Well, that takes a little explaining. So here we go. The first mistake, however, many interpreters make in deciphering Ezekiel 38 through 39 is to read these two chapters in isolation. The fact is, chapters 38 and 39 are a culmination of a prophecy and not a prophecy within itself. A correct interpretation requires reading and interpreting several preceding chapters in the book of Ezekiel. Chapter 36 is a good starting point to begin studying to get an accurate interpretation of the Gog-Magog war. So before looking at Ezekiel 36, a brief history of Israel is also essential to understanding this prophecy. Let's start with Jacob. God changed his name to Israel. Israel had 12 sons: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Dan, Gad, Naphtali, Joseph, Benjamin, and Asher. Now, I want to give a little warning here, because there are variations of a few of these names throughout the Bible. But for brevity of this video, let's agree with these. The descendants of his sons formed the nation of Israel, which is also called in the Bible Israel, Israelites, children of Israel, or house of Israel. The descendants of each son were considered to be a tribe or a clan, but all of these tribes collectively formed the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel remained intact from the time of Jacob through the reign of Solomon, who was the son of David. Solomon had an extreme appreciation for women. However, these women turned his attention away from God. After several warnings, Solomon did not change his behavior. As punishment, God divided the nation of Israel during the reign of Solomon's son and heir, Rehoboam. This division is illustrated in 1 Kings 11, verses 11 through 13, and verses 28 through 39. When Rehoboam became king, he relied on the unwise counsel of his close associates when dealing with the Israelites. In turn, many of the tribes revolted and made Jeroboam their king, as prophesied by prophet Ahijah in 1 Kings 11, 29 through 39. Eventually, Rehoboam ruled essentially the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and the priestly group Levi, although there were some defectors from other tribes. Collectively, this group under Rehoboam was known as Judah, the tribe of Judah, the house of Judah. The house of Judah resided in Jerusalem, as depicted in 2 Chronicles 11:5. The other tribes settled in Samaria. In literature, they are often referred to as the Northern Kingdom because of Samaria's geographic proximity to Jerusalem. Together, these northern tribes were referred to as Ephraim, Israel, Joseph, and the house of Israel. Okay, to recap, a single unit of people from one common ancestor became two distinct and separate nations. Because the priests of the Levites tribe remained in Jerusalem, there were no priests in the northern kingdom. Jeroboam, who was the king of the northern kingdom, became paranoid of losing power and refused to allow anyone to go to Jerusalem to worship because he feared they would not return. And this is recorded in 1 Kings 12, 25 through 33. To circumvent the Exodus, he established a new priesthood and feast days based on idol worship. This sacrilege further alienated the two camps, or the two nations. The animosity between the two nations grew to such a level that they were continually at war. 2 Chronicles 13, 15 through 18 states, "Then the men of Judah raised the battle shout, and when the men of Judah shouted, God defeated Jeroboam and all Israel before Abijah and Judah. The men of Israel fled before Judah, and God gave them into their hand. Abijah and his people struck them with great force. So there fell slain of Israel 500,000 chosen men. Thus the men of Israel were subdued at that time, and the men of Judah prevailed, because they relied on the Lord, the God of their fathers." The preceding passage is not a misprint. It clearly illustrated the distinction between the nations of Israel, two separate camps, and the animosity that existed between them. The Assyrians eventually captured Samaria and conquered the northern kingdom. This is recorded in 2 Kings 17:6. Assyria assimilated the Israelites into their Assyrian culture, removed them from Samaria, and settled them into other areas of the empire. Through years of intermarriage and idol worship, the northern tribes lost their religious culture and identity as a collective nation of people. Judah, the southern kingdom, also had many years of captivity and occupation. In contrast to the northern tribes, Judah maintained cohesiveness and identity as a nation, even up to and through the time of Jesus. With that history established, we can now begin understanding when the Gog Magog war will take place. Before the war can start, many prerequisites must happen first. Chapter 37 of Ezekiel illustrates the most important prerequisite that must take place before the Gog-Magog war. Before the war begins, the original nation of Israel that was divided into two warring factions, Israel and Judah, must be reunited and become a single nation again. In Ezekiel 37:11, the Spirit of the Lord called this reunited nation the whole house of Israel, and used two illustrations in Ezekiel 37 to demonstrate when and how this unification will occur. One illustration was the valley of dry bones, and the other illustration was two sticks. Of the two pieces of wood, one was labeled Judah for the southern kingdom, and the other was labeled Joseph, representing the northern kingdom. God instructed Ezekiel to connect the two sticks as one. The two sticks, when joined, represented the reunited whole house of Israel. What did the Lord mean by the whole house of Israel? Well, remember, after King Solomon died, the nation was split into two separate and antagonistic nations. Judah retained its customs and traditions. Israel did not, because its citizens were scattered among the surrounding nations and all over the world. The whole house of Israel is not just the descendants of some of Jacob's sons, but the surviving descendants of all 12. All of Jacob's descendants who survived the Great Tribulation and remain until Jesus returns to defeat their enemies will be the procreators of the reunited nation of Israel, the whole house of Israel. God will escort them, no matter where they are, on earth, to the promised land. Ezekiel's whole house of Israel is the same as Paul's all Israel. Paul said, "And in this way all Israel will be saved, as it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion, he will banish ungodliness from Jacob." That's in Romans 11:26. All right, so understandably, some people will ask, well, what about 1948 and 1967? Some interpreters suggest that the manifestation, at least in part, of Ezekiel's vision in chapter 37 will occur before the Lord's return. They claim that the reunion of Judah and Israel began in earnest in 1948 or 1967. Of course, in 1948, the state of Israel was established. In 1967, the state of Israel gained complete control of Jerusalem and surrounding areas. Since then, thousands of people who claim Jewish and Israelite heritage have migrated to Israel. But is this flight to Israel the resurrection of the dry bones or the joining of the two sticks that Ezekiel and other prophets proclaim? The answer is no, because the Lord required many more prerequisites that the whole house of Israel must meet before the Gog-Magog war can take place. Before the war can begin, 9 more prerequisites must happen first. None of these have happened yet. In chapter 26 of Ezekiel, there are 5 prerequisites. Ezekiel 36:25. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean from all uncleanness. That has not happened. That has not happened to Israel. That has not happened to America. That has not happened to Europe. That has not happened to anywhere in the world. No humans have been clean from all their uncleanness. We're all sinners, and we do have some saved by grace. But this is a particular prerequisite for the whole house of Israel, is that they will have clean water sprinkled on them, and they will be clean from all their uncleanness. And everyone knows this has not happened. The second prerequisite from chapter 36, and I will give you a new heart and a new spirit I will put within you. That, just like prerequisite 1, has not happened to Israel or the Jewish people. Prerequisite 3, Ezekiel 36:26. I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. That has not happened. And you see a pattern going here, because this is what is promised to happen to Israel. All of these 3 so far were things that are promised to happen to Israel, but we know this will not happen until the millennium, until Jesus comes a second time and reestablishes Israel and changes them in these ways. Prerequisite 4, I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes and be careful to obey my rules. Again, we all sin, not just Israel. Every person in the world is a sinner. Every person in the world has sinned and is sinning. And this does not apply to them or Israel or anyone. Prerequisite 5, I will deliver you from all your uncleanness. Again, we see this pattern here. And this is in verse 30, Ezekiel 36:29. I will deliver you from all your uncleanness. No one can say that. Not Christians, not anyone, because that has not happened yet. We all sin. Now, this will happen during the millennium. So that's why you see this pattern starting here, is because this prophecy is not for this current time that we're in. This is a special time, and these prerequisites prove that. In chapter 37 of Ezekiel, there are 2 more prerequisites. Ezekiel 37:24. My servant David shall be king over them, and they shall all have one shepherd. Now, granted, and you can look this up for yourself, the first king or ruler of Israel was named David. But this is not the David we're talking about. This is not the 1940. The 1948 David is not the David that this verse is talking about, because they will have one shepherd. And not only that, they've had several rulers since then. So prerequisite 6 from verse 37 has not happened yet. Prerequisite 7, Ezekiel 37:26. I will make a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them. Again, this hasn't happened. And those of you that know your Bible know that when this will happen, and you know that this will not happen until the return of Jesus. And the final prerequisite is in chapter 38. And to me, this is other than the one of just a gathering itself from all nations back to Jerusalem. This is the most important one in chapter 38. And this is in Ezekiel 38, verse 8, because it is describing the situation right before the Gog Magog war. It is describing what's going on at that time and why this particular time the Gog and Magog nations will take advantage to attack Israel. So the 8th prerequisite is this, because this is spoken from the perspective of Gog and Magog. I will fall upon the quiet people who dwell securely, all of them dwelling without walls and having no bars or gates. Honestly, there are places in the world where this may be occurring. This summer, I drove out west. I drove all the way basically from Florida to Washington State. All right. So I saw places where this probably could be happening, where there are places where people are living peacefully, no bars, leaving their doors unlocked. This may happen in certain countries like Canada. This may happen in certain places in China. But the place where this is not happening, especially right now, currently, is in Israel. Israel is the most fortified country in the world, has a complete anti-ballistic missile defense system over the whole nation. No other country can say that, large or small. Israel, if there's any walls, if there's any bars, if there's any gates in anywhere in the world right now, it is in Israel. So this alone should be enough to help anyone realize that the Gog-Magog war in no time soon is going to occur in Israel. So none of these precursors can happen before Jesus returns and restores the nation of Israel during the millennium. That's why John in Revelation could project that this war will not happen until years into the millennium, because the prerequisites, all of these things have to be set in place. So the most important fact to remember about this separation is that the separation of the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom is that it will exist until Christ returns and establishes the new covenant with Israel. This new covenant is spoken of in many places in the Bible, but specifically in Jeremiah. Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, not like the covenant I made with their fathers, on the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. My covenant that they broke, though I was their husband, declares the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them. I will write it on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And no longer shall each one teach his neighbor and each his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. The new covenant will happen when the millennium begins. Israel will be at peace. No walls, no bars, no gates. After that, and only after that, can the Gog-Magog war come to pass. So please, relax. The Gog-Magog war will happen no time soon.